After 30 years, Jamie Raskin found himself speechless. The Harvard legal scholar who'd impeached a president was now frozen, mouth open, silent. Across from him, Tulsi Gabbard sat perfectly still. Her military posture, no triumph, just truth spoken. Congressman, the Democratic Party isn't just a political party anymore. It's a cult. 9 words that broke him. 2 hours earlier, Raskin came in, sure he would destroy her. He had the research, the questions, 30 years of never losing. He had no clue he was stepping into a trap. The Senate hearing to confirm the Director of National Intelligence should have been Jamie Raskin's moment. He arrived early, a thick binder tucked under his arm. Inside, 200 pages of research on Tulsi Gabbard's difficult past. Every interview she'd given, every vote that brought up questions, every meeting that could seem suspicious. He nodded at the cameras as he took his seat. Like a general acknowledging his troops before battle, CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times. They were all there. They all expected a show. He planned to give them one. This will be easy, he thought, arranging his papers with practiced precision. She's a soldier, not a scholar. I'll have her contradicting herself within 20 minutes. He glanced at the empty chair across from him. Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic congresswoman, former DNC vice chair, now a Trump nominee. The word traitor wasn't in his planned speech, but it didn't need to be. He would hint at it, suggest it, letting the audience reach their own conclusions. That was the constitutional prosecutor's skill. She thinks she can handle me, he mused, adjusting his glasses. She has no idea what she's walking into. When Tulsi entered, she didn't look at him. She walked to her seat with military precision. No entourage, no bulky binder, just a thin folder she could hold in one hand. She wore a dark blazer, no jewelry, minimal makeup, nothing performative, nothing for show. She sat down like a sniper, settling into position, focused and ready. Only then did she look at Raskin. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just observed. A cold feeling ran down Raskin's spine. He ignored it. "Miss Gabbard," he smiled, his television smile. "Your journey from Democratic Congresswoman to Trump administration nominee is fascinating. I have quite a few questions." "I'm sure you do, Congressman." Her voice was flat, controlled. "I have answers." His smile widened. "Answers? Well, we'll see about that. We will." She paused. "I have some questions, too." "Questions?" Raskin almost chuckled. "She thinks she's going to question me." He turned to his binder, already enjoying the upcoming confrontation. He should have paid attention to what she left unsaid. She also had questions, and unlike his, hers came loaded. Raskin began his opening statement. 3 minutes of careful framing. Concerns about judgment, questions about loyalty, patterns needing scrutiny. He was skilled at this. 30 years of practice, every word chosen for maximum impact, minimum liability. When he finished, he leaned back, satisfied. "Your response, Ms. Gabbard." Tulsi didn't move, didn't reach for notes, she simply spoke. "Before we begin, Congressman, let's establish who's in this room." Raskin raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure," she continued. "I enlisted in the Army National Guard after September 11, 2001. I was 21 years old. I didn't wait to be drafted. I volunteered." She paused, letting the weight of it sink in. 2 deployments to Iraq. Combat Medical Unit. I held 19-year-olds as they bled out in the sand. Congressmen, boys younger than your law students, boys who would never see their mothers again. Raskin's smile flickered. This wasn't in his preparation.
I'm currently a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, still serving, over 20 years in uniform. She looked directly at him. While I was in a combat zone, you were teaching constitutional law at American University. Raskin opened his mouth to respond. While I was loading wounded soldiers onto helicopters, you were grading term papers. Military service is admirable, Raskin interjected, regaining his composure. But it doesn't give you— I'm not finished, Congressman. The words cut through the room like a blade. Raskin stopped mid-sentence. While I was escorting caskets home to mothers in small towns across America, you were giving lectures about sacrifice. While I was writing letters to families explaining why their sons wouldn't be coming home, you were writing law review articles about the theory of war. She let the silence hold for 3 seconds. I don't say this to diminish your service. I say it to establish mine. So when we discuss national security today, when you question my judgment, my loyalty, my fitness for this position, understand something. Her voice dropped slightly. I'm not speaking from theory. I'm not speaking from a textbook or a think tank or a faculty lounge. I'm speaking from body bags, from blood I've had on my hands, from friends I've buried. She folded her hands on the table. Now, you had questions. Raskin stared at her. For perhaps the first time in the hearing, he was genuinely unsure how to proceed. This isn't how it was supposed to go, he thought. She was supposed to be defensive. She was supposed to stumble. He glanced at his binder. 200 pages of research, none of it addressed this. Behind him, almost imperceptibly, a Democratic senator shifted in his seat, creating distance. No one else noticed. Tulsi did. Raskin recovered quickly. He was too experienced to stay off balance for long. Ms. Gabbard, your military service is noted, but service doesn't immunize someone from scrutiny. Let's discuss some of the concerns that have been raised. Let's discuss something else first, Congressman. Raskin blinked. Excuse me. Let's discuss why your party tried to end my career. That's a dramatic oversimplification of, let me show you the pattern. Tulsi's voice remained level, a military briefing tone. Then you tell me if it's simple. She opened her thin folder for the first time. 2011 Libya. I asked why we were bombing a sovereign nation without congressional authorization. I asked what the plan was after Gaddafi fell. Basic questions, the kind any responsible legislator should ask. She looked up. Do you know what answer I got, Congressman? Raskin didn't respond. None. No answer. Just whispers in the hallways that I was difficult, that I did not understand the bigger picture, that I was not a team player. She pulled out a photograph, held it up. Libya today. Open slave markets, human beings sold like livestock. A failed state that's become a highway for terrorists into Europe. This is what the bigger picture created. She set the photo down. I asked questions. Your party created hell on earth. And when I pointed that out, I became a problem to be managed. Raskin shifted in his seat. The situation in Libya is complex. Syria. Tulsi didn't let him finish. I went there. I met with Assad. You met with a war criminal. I met with the leader of a country we were about to bomb. I wanted to understand the situation on the ground. I wanted to ask questions before we started another war. Her voice sharpened slightly. Your party called me an Assad apologist, a traitor.
They said I was giving comfort to a dictator. Do you know what I was actually doing, Congressman? I was asking for evidence. Evidence of the chemical weapons claims. Evidence that intervention would help rather than hurt. Evidence that we had learned anything from Iraq, from Libya, from every disaster that came before. She pulled out another document. I asked why we were arming rebel groups that were allied with Al-Qaeda. I asked why American weapons were ending up in the hands of terrorists. Basic questions, the kind that might have prevented catastrophe. The Syrian situation, do you know who those rebels became? Tulsi's eyes locked onto his. ISIS, al-Nusra, we armed terrorists, congressmen, American tax dollars, American weapons, in the hands of people who wanted to destroy us. She set the document down. I was right. And for being right, I was called a traitor. Raskin's hand moved toward his water glass. He stopped himself. A tell. He knew better. And then there was 2016. Tulsi's voice dropped lower. The DNC. Something flickered in Raskin's eyes. Caution. I was vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. I had a front-row seat to what happened during the primary. The primary was thoroughly... I watched the rigging, Congressman. I saw the coordination between the DNC and the Clinton campaign. I saw how the thumb was placed on the scale against Bernie Sanders. She pulled out printed emails, held them up. These are your party's own communications, verified, authentic, never disputed. I read them. I couldn't stay silent. Those emails were stolen by... The content was never denied. Tulsi's voice cut through. Your party didn't say those emails are fake. Your party said, how dare you read them? That's not a denial. That's an admission. She set the emails down. I resigned as vice chair. I endorsed Bernie Sanders. I told the truth about what I had seen. She paused. And from that moment, that exact moment, I was marked for destruction. The word hung in the air. Destruction. Do you see the pattern, Congressman? Tulsi's voice was calm, methodical, devastating. Ask a question, get marginalized. Tell the truth, get blacklisted. Refuse to comply, get destroyed. She leaned forward slightly. That's not democracy. That's not a political party. That's a machine. And I had the audacity to throw a wrench into it. Raskin flipped through his binder, looking for something, anything. His prepared attacks suddenly seemed inadequate. She wasn't denying the accusations he'd planned to make. She was reframing the entire conversation. Her evidence is stronger than mine, he realized, and immediately pushed the thought away. Behind him, almost imperceptibly, a Democratic senator checked his phone, leaned over to an aide, whispered something, didn't look at Raskin's voice changed, dropping lower. This was personal. Now, let's talk about the moment your party tried to kill my career for good. Raskin straightened. I don't think kill is... October 2019, Hillary Clinton, a podcast interview heard by millions. Raskin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The former Secretary of State, the former Democratic nominee for president, one of the most powerful people in your party. Tulsi spoke slowly, deliberately. She said I was the favorite of the Russians. She said they were grooming me as a third-party candidate. She let the accusation hang. Russian asset. That's what Hillary Clinton called me on a public platform to millions of listeners. Secretary Clinton raised concerns that many. What evidence did she provide? Congressman Raskin paused. The intelligence community had indicated. What evidence? There were concerns based on patterns of... What evidence? Silence. Tulsi nodded slowly. None. There was no evidence, no investigation, no proof, just an accusation thrown like a grenade designed to destroy. She pulled out a collection of headlines, spread them across the table. The next morning, I woke up a Russian asset. CNN ran with it. MSNBC ran with it. The New York Times ran with it. Every network, every newspaper, every talking head, all of them repeating Hillary Clinton's accusation as if it were fact. Her voice remained controlled, but something harder was underneath. Do you know what happens when Hillary Clinton calls you a Russian spy, Congressman? She didn't wait for an answer. Your Google search results change overnight. Tulsi Gabbard, Russian asset. That became what people found when they looked me up. Speaking invitations disappeared. Donors fled. Colleagues who had worked with me for years suddenly couldn't remember my name. She gathered the headlines back into a pile. My own party tried to erase me based on a lie told on a podcast. No due process, no presumption of innocence, no opportunity to defend myself before the verdict was delivered. She looked directly at Raskin. I held top-secret security clearance for over a decade, Congressman. I passed every background check your government administered. I sat on the Armed Services Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee. I was trusted with the nation's most sensitive secrets. Her voice sharpened. But Hillary Clinton goes on a podcast, and suddenly I'm a Russian spy and your entire party just goes along with it. No one asks for proof. No one demands evidence. No one says, wait, maybe we should verify this before we destroy someone's life. Raskin's hands were flat on the table now, pressing down, steadying. Did you speak up, Congressman? He didn't answer. Did you demand evidence? Did you say, this is wrong, we need proof? Nothing. Or did you just let it happen? Did you watch your party destroy a fellow member based on a lie and decide that silence was the safer choice? Raskin's voice came out tighter than he intended. These were serious concerns raised during a period of heightened awareness about foreign interference. Serious concerns. Tulsi's tone was ice. That's what you call it when your party destroys someone without evidence. Serious concerns. She shook her head slowly. I called it something else, Congressman. I called it McCarthyism. I called it a political hit job. I called it exactly what it was, the machinery of your party grinding up anyone who dared to dissent. She paused. Your silence, then, is the same as your silence now. And that silence tells me everything I need to know about your party's commitment to truth. Raskin reached for his water glass. This time he didn't stop himself. His hand was shaking slightly. He hoped the cameras didn't catch it. They did. Behind him, a Democratic senator stood quietly, murmured something about another commitment. He walked out without looking back. Raskin didn't turn around. He knew what he'd see. Tulsi shifted her posture. Somehow she seemed larger now, more present. Let's talk about your record, Congressman. Raskin attempted to recover his footing. I'm happy to discuss. Let's start with your votes. She didn't need notes for this. She had memorized it. Military authorization. You voted yes. Defense spending increases. Yes, every single one. Ukraine funding, unlimited, unaccountable, no questions asked. Yes. She listed them methodically. Every war, every bomb, every dollar spent on intervention. You voted from the safety of Capitol Hill in air-conditioned chambers, surrounded by staff and security. Her voice dropped. I was one of the soldiers you voted to send. Raskin opened his mouth. I deployed to Iraq, Congressman. Combat Medical Unit. Do you know what that means? It means I treated the casualties, the boys who stepped on IEDs, the men who took shrapnel from explosions authorized by votes like yours. She wasn't raising her voice. She didn't need to. I remember a 19-year-old from Ohio, gut wound. He was screaming for his mother. I held his hand for 45 minutes while we tried to keep him inside his own body. The room was absolutely silent. He died calling for someone who was 6,000 miles away. Someone who would get a folded flag and a letter instead of her son. Tulsi's eyes never left Raskin's. The authorization that sent him there, voted for by people like you, people who have never seen what a bomb does to a human body, people who have never smelled what death smells like, people who vote for war and then go home to their families and sleep soundly. Raskin's face had lost color noticeably, even under the studio lights. Your children will never serve, Congressman. We both know that the sons and daughters who die in your wars, they don't come from Bethesda or Georgetown. They come from small towns, poor communities, places you've never visited and never will. She leaned forward slightly. You vote for war. They fight it. They die in it. And you get to feel patriotic about it from 1,000 miles away. Raskin found his voice. It came out weaker than he wanted. Supporting our military and questioning policy are not mutually exclusive. Supporting our military. Something flickered in Tulsi's eyes.
You voted to send troops to die in countries you can't find on a map. In wars with no exit strategy for reasons that changed every time the last excuse stopped working. She shook her head. That's not supporting troops, Congressman. That's using them. They're not people to you. They're policy tools. Acceptable losses in your geopolitical chess games. That's not... Have you ever written a letter to a mother explaining why her son won't be coming home? Raskin didn't answer. I have 12 of them. 12 mothers who will never see their children again. Do you know what you write in those letters? Congressman, silence. You write lies. You write his sacrifice mattered.
You write, he died for something important. And you hope to God the mother doesn't ask you the question you can't answer. What did he actually die for? Tulsi sat back. I left your party because I couldn't keep voting for wars I knew were wrong. I couldn't keep authorizing young Americans to die for nothing. I couldn't keep writing those letters. She paused. You're still voting yes. You're still cashing defense contractor donations. You're still sleeping fine at night. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Do you ever think about them, Congressman? The 19-year-olds calling for their mothers? Or are they just abstractions in your policy papers? Numbers in your cost-benefit analysis? Raskin had no answer. For the first time in 30 years, Jaime Raskin had no answer at all. His hands had stopped moving. His face was pale. The constitutional arguments he'd prepared, the clever framings, the legal jujitsu, the intellectual superiority, none of it mattered here. You can't argue law against a woman who's held dying soldiers. Behind him, 2 more seats emptied. He didn't turn around. Something shifted in Raskin's posture. He had been on defense for too long. 90 minutes of taking hits. 90 minutes of watching his preparation crumble against her testimony. But he was Jaime Raskin, Harvard Law, a constitutional scholar. He had impeached a president. He didn't lose. Find the opening, he told himself. Find the weakness. He sat up straighter, adjusted his glasses with deliberate calm. When he spoke, his voice was steadier than it had been in an hour. Miss Gabbard, let's address what's really happening here. Tulsi's expression didn't change. She waited.
You present yourself as a principled truth-teller, a soldier of integrity who was persecuted for asking questions. He allowed a small, condescending smile. It's a compelling narrative, but let's look at the actual pattern. He pulled documents from his binder, finally using his preparation. You met with Bashar al-Assad, a man who gassed his own people. You sat with him, legitimized him. I sought to understand. You appeared on Tucker Carlson's show repeatedly, friendly softball interviews where you attacked your own party. I went on many. You've questioned Ukrainian aid while Russia conducts a war of aggression. You've echoed Russian talking points about NATO expansion. Raskin was building momentum. Now this was his territory. And now you've accepted a nomination from Donald Trump himself, the man your party, your former party, impeached twice. He leaned forward, Professor Mode fully engaged. You talk about principles, Ms. Gabbard, but let's examine the trajectory. Every position you've taken, Assad, Tucker, Ukraine, Trump, happens to align with Russian interests. Every single one. He spread his hands as if presenting obvious evidence to a slow student. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. You're not a whistleblower. You're not a persecuted truth-teller. You're an opportunist who discovered that switching sides paid better. Energy shifted in the room. A few murmurs from the Democratic side, some nodding heads. Raskin pressed his advantage. Your party didn't abandon you, Ms. Gabbard. You abandoned your party the moment you calculated that there was more profit on the other side. And now you want us to believe you're the victim. He was in his element now. Complex sentences, constitutional framing, the intellectual superiority that had served him for 30 years. The question isn't whether you asked uncomfortable questions. The question is why your answers always seem to benefit America's adversaries. That's not principle. That's a pattern. And patterns deserve scrutiny. He leaned back, satisfied. So, let me ask you directly. Why should we trust you with the nation's intelligence when your own record raises so many questions about whose interests you actually serve? The room waited. Tulsi was quiet. Raskin felt it. The momentum swinging back to him. Finally, this was what 30 years of debate experience delivered. You absorb the punches, find the opening, and strike. Got her, he thought. Back on my ground now. He allowed himself a small smile. Behind him, his staff exchanged relieved glances. The silence stretched. Tulsi seemed to be considering his words. She has nothing, Raskin thought. Finally, she has nothing. He didn't see the trap. He had walked directly into it. Are you finished, Congressman? Tulsi's voice was calm, almost gentle. Raskin nodded, still confident. I believe the record speaks for itself. Yes, she nodded slowly. It does. Something in her tone made his smile falter. You just proved everything I've been saying. Raskin blinked. Excuse me. Tulsi held up her hand, counting on her fingers. I asked for evidence of the Russia accusation. You gave theories and insinuations. She raised another finger. I asked why no one demanded proof before destroying my career. You changed the subject to Assad. Another finger. I asked about your votes for endless wars. You attacked my character instead of answering. She lowered her hand. And just now, you did exactly what your party always does. I presented facts. You responded with implications. I gave testimony. You gave conspiracy theories. Raskin's mouth opened. That's the playbook, isn't it, Congressman? Tulsi's voice remained level, but something harder was underneath. When you can't win the argument, destroy the person making it. When you can't answer the question the questioner's motives. She shook her head slowly. I've seen this playbook before. I've been on the receiving end of it, and I just watched you run it in real time in front of cameras for the whole country to see. That's a mischaracterization, is it? Tulsi cut through. You just accused me of being a Russian asset again. Still, after 3 years of zero evidence, you didn't present proof, Congressman. You presented the same innuendo that Hillary Clinton used to try to destroy me. She leaned forward. That's not questioning. That's McCarthyism with a law degree. Raskin reached for a response, found nothing. You want to know what your party is really like, Congressman? I'll tell you because I was there. I was inside. Something in her voice changed, harder now, more dangerous. I sat in those meetings. I heard what leadership says behind closed doors. I know how decisions get made, who calls whom, how the word goes out when someone needs to be destroyed. Raskin's face was losing color. I know which journalists take direction. I know which talking heads coordinate their attacks. I know how the machine operates, Congressman, because I was part of it. I saw it from the inside. These are baseless. No evidence. Tulsi's eyes locked onto his. Congressman, I am the evidence. I'm a former 4-term congresswoman from your party. I'm a former vice chair of the DNC. I sat in the rooms. I heard the conversations. I watched the machine work. She paused. And when I told the truth about what I saw, your party tried to destroy me. That's not allegation. That's autobiography. I lived it. Raskin gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. You came here to expose me as a traitor. Tulsi's voice dropped lower. But all you've done is demonstrate exactly how your party operates. Attack, smear, insinuate, never answer, never provide evidence. Just destroy. She glanced at the empty seats behind him. Your colleagues are leaving, Congressman. Have you noticed that's what happens in your party when the truth starts coming out? The loyal members head for the exits. They don't want to be standing nearby when everything collapses. Raskin didn't turn around. He couldn't. That's your party right now, Congressman. Empty chairs and people who don't want to be associated with what you're doing. An aide approached Raskin, leaned down, whispered urgently, Sir, leadership is suggesting we wrap this up. Raskin shook his head sharply. Sir, I can handle this. The aide stepped back, but he didn't sit down. He stood there, ready to evacuate, like a man watching a building start to crumble. Tulsi's voice dropped, almost contemplative now. Let me tell you what I learned inside your party, Congressman, what I saw before I left, what made me realize I couldn't stay. She spoke slowly, deliberately, like a surgeon making incisions. The party of JFK, the party that asked what you could do for your country, became the party that asks what your country can do for your donors. Raskin didn't interrupt. The party of free speech became the party of disinformation labels and censorship boards. The party of anti-war became the party of endless intervention dressed in humanitarian language. The party of the working class became the party of coastal elites who despise the working class. She shook her head. But here's the real change, Congressman. The one that matters most. The one that made me leave. She paused. The party stopped tolerating questions. She began to list. Ask about Libya. You're difficult. Ask about Syria. You're an Assad apologist. Ask about the DNC. You're disloyal. Ask about Ukraine. You're a Russian asset. Ask about anything, anything at all. And suddenly, you're a problem to be eliminated. Her voice hardened. You don't debate anymore. You destroy. You don't persuade. You purge. You don't argue. You annihilate. Anyone who questions the narrative becomes an enemy, not a colleague with a different view, an enemy to be crushed. She looked around the room. Where are your colleagues, Congressman? The question hung in the air. Raskin finally turned. The seats behind him were nearly empty. 3 senators remained out of 11. His own staff had moved back, creating distance. He was alone. That's what I'm talking about, Tulsi said quietly. That's your party in miniature. The moment truth becomes inconvenient, the loyal members disappear. They don't defend. They don't debate. They just leave. She folded her hands. I refused to leave quietly. I refused to stay silent. I asked questions. I told the truth. And for 3 years, your party has tried to make me pay for it. Raskin's voice came out. You're making accusations without evidence. Tulsi almost smiled. Congressman, I am the evidence. Everything I've described, I witnessed. Everything I've accused your party of doing, they did to me, publicly, on record, in front of the entire country. She gestured at him. And you just did it again right here, right now. You accused me of being a Russian asset without a shred of proof. You attacked my character instead of answering my questions. You ran the exact playbook I've been describing. Her voice dropped. Thank you for the demonstration. Tulsi's voice became almost gentle, the calm of someone about to deliver a final truth. You asked me tonight why I left the Democratic Party, Congressman. Raskin didn't respond. Couldn't. I'll tell you. She took a breath. I left because I couldn't be part of what it became. I left because asking questions became a crime. I left because telling the truth became treason. I left because I watched good people, people who just wanted to serve their country, get destroyed for the sin of disagreeing. She paused. I left because I realized something about your party that I couldn't unsee. Raskin waited. The whole room waited. Do you know what a cult is, Congressman? Silence.
A cult is a group where questioning the leadership is forbidden, where absolute loyalty is required, where anyone who dissents is not debated, not argued with, not persuaded, but destroyed. Her voice dropped lower. A cult doesn't convince, it punishes. It doesn't win arguments, it eliminates the people making them. She looked directly at him. The Democratic Party isn't a political party anymore, Congressman. The room held its breath. It's a cult. The word landed like a bomb. And the first rule of the cult is never question the leaders. She let it sit for a moment. I broke that rule. I asked questions about Libya and I was marginalized. I asked questions about Syria and I was called a traitor. I asked questions about the DNC and I was blacklisted.
I asked questions about endless wars and I was accused of being a Russian asset. Her voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the room. I broke the first rule of the cult, and your party has spent 3 years trying to make me pay for it. She paused. I'd rather be excommunicated than complicit. One final beat. The question is, Congressman, can you say the same? 2 seconds of absolute silence. Then the room exploded. Gasps, shouts, applause crashing against protests. Camera flashes like a lightning storm. Someone yelling, "Answer her!" Someone else yelling something unintelligible. And Jamie Raskin, Harvard law graduate, constitutional scholar, the man who had impeached a president, sat frozen, mouth open, no sound. For 30 years, he had never been rendered speechless. It took a soldier from Hawaii 90 minutes to do what no one else had ever done: silence him completely by simply telling the truth. The physical breakdown happened in stages. First, his face. The color drained away until he looked almost gray, not pale. Gray, like something vital had been removed. The confident smirk he'd worn 2 hours ago might as well have belonged to a different person. His mouth moved slightly, forming words that never became sounds. A small tick appeared near his left eye. It hadn't been there before. Then his body. The commanding posture dissolved. Shoulders that had been squared and confident curved inward, as if trying to make him smaller. His hands, which had gestured so eloquently throughout his career, lay flat on the table. Not for emphasis, but for support. He looked like a man who had been punched and was still processing that it happened. Then his eyes. They darted around the room, looking for help, looking for an ally, looking for anyone who might rescue him. His remaining staff wouldn't meet his gaze. The few senators still present were studying their phones, their papers, anything but him. The cameras he had commanded for 30 years now felt predatory, recording his destruction for posterity. No one was coming to save him. He tried to speak, had to clear his throat twice. That's a gross... The sentence died. He tried again. The characterization of nothing. The words wouldn't form inside his mind. The brilliant mind that had argued before the Supreme Court, that had prosecuted a president, that had never lost a debate. There was only static. Say something. Anything. You're a constitutional scholar. Speak. She called the party a cult on national television. Respond. Why can't I? What do I even say? She was inside. She knows things I don't know. And underneath all of it, the thought he couldn't push away. What if she's right? Across from him, Tulsi sat perfectly still. The same posture as when she'd entered. Hands folded, back straight, military bearing unchanged. No triumph on her face, no gloating, no satisfaction. Just the calm of a soldier who had completed her mission. Raskin reached for his water glass. His hand was shaking badly enough that water sloshed over the rim. He set it down without drinking. He shuffled his papers. The 200 pages of research, the careful preparation, the clever questions, all of it useless now. He didn't even know what he was looking for. His aide approached again, leaned down, whispered with barely controlled urgency, "Sir, we need to leave now." Raskin shook his head. The motion was weak, automatic. "Sir," the aide's voice was harder now. "This is over. We're leaving." Something in Raskin's face changed. Something broke. He nodded. The exit was not dignified. Staff flanked him, not supporting, but shielding, blocking camera angles as best they could. They moved toward the side door, not the main entrance. The back way out. The way you leave when you don't want to be seen. Raskin didn't look back at Tulsi. He couldn't. His binder, 200 pages of preparation, remained on the table, abandoned. The side hallway was supposed to be secure. It wasn't. Reporters had found their way there, cameras up, questions flying. "Congressman Raskin, response to the cult accusation." "Congressman, do you have evidence of Russian connections?" "Congressman, over here." His staff pushed through, creating a path, getting him away. Raskin didn't respond to any of it. He moved like a man underwater, each step requiring conscious effort. The questions washed over him without registering. They found an empty corridor. Door closed. Silence. Raskin leaned against the wall, actually leaned, like he couldn't support his own weight. His phone was buzzing continuously. He didn't look at it. "Sir?" His aide's voice was careful. "What do we tell the press?" Raskin stared at the wall opposite. Didn't answer. "Sir, nothing." The aide exchanged glances with other staff members. Someone muttered something about damage control. Someone else was already on the phone with party leadership. But Raskin wasn't listening. He was thinking about something Tulsi had said about questions, about what happens when you ask them. For 30 years, he had been on the other side of that equation, the one asking questions, the one demanding answers, the one in control. He had never considered what it felt like to be questioned, to be examined, to have your entire career and purpose laid bare by someone who simply refused to accept the standard answers. What if she's right? The thought came again. He tried to push it away. It wouldn't go. In the hearing room, Tulsi Gabbard remained seated. The chaos swirled around her. Reporters shouting questions, camera flashes, the buzz of 100 phones capturing the moment. She let it wash over her without reaction. After a moment, she gathered her single folder, the thin one, the one that had been enough. She stood with military precision, straightened her blazer. A reporter pushed forward. "Ms. Gabbard, do you regret calling the Democratic Party a cult?" She considered the question. "I told the truth," she said. "That's what I came here to do." She walked toward the main exit, the front door, head high, the way you leave when you have nothing to hide. More questions followed her. "Ms. Gabbard, what's your response to Congressman Raskin?" She paused at the door, turned slightly. "He didn't need a response from me. He gave himself one." Then she was gone. The hearing would be replayed millions of times, analyzed, debated, memed. The phrase, "cult of compliance," would trend for weeks. Think pieces would be written. Careers would be reassessed. Jamie Raskin would eventually give a statement, something about heated exchanges and fundamental disagreements. He would not address the cult accusation directly. He would not provide the evidence Tulsi had asked for. He would not debate her again. Tulsi Gabbard would be confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, not unanimously, but decisively. The Republicans had the votes, and after the hearing, several Democrats discovered urgent reasons to be absent for the final tally. No one wanted to be associated with what had happened to Raskin. 3 weeks later, a junior reporter would ask Jamie Raskin about the hearing at an unrelated press event. His response was brief. "I don't have anything to add to what was said that day." He didn't mention Tulsi by name. He didn't mention the word cult. Some battles aren't won with eloquence. Some battles aren't won with credentials or preparation or 30 years of experience. Some battles are won simply by someone who refuses to lie anymore. Jamie Raskin had spent his career winning arguments. In one hearing, he discovered that arguments don't matter when the other side has the truth. And the truth, delivered by a soldier who had paid for it in blood and sacrifice, was something no constitutional scholar could defeat. Tulsi Gabbard had been called a Russian asset. She had been called a traitor. She had been called an opportunist, a turncoat, a useful idiot. After that hearing, she would be called something far more dangerous. Right.